Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us tonight. We're going to be talking about crime scene processing, the relationship of the Murdoch homicides in South Carolina, and how law enforcement looks at these crime scenes. And we'll be going into certain details of the relationships. That it doesn't matter if it's just this one crime scene or it's other crime scenes. They all tell a story, and that's what we're going to be getting into tonight. A little bit before we get into that on housekeeping, for everyone that's new here in chat, respect the families, respect the mods, respect each other, and enjoy your time here. After the
Wait.
Okay.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
4 months verbal judo member.
You.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Verbal. We appreciate everybody's support. But as we get into this, like I said, everybody respect everybody, and we'll have a good time tonight. We're going to be talking about the crime scenes. And as always, for everyone that's new to the channel, we're going to do a little bit of introduction here.
Mm-hmm.
This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years service. Started off my career working in the jail, went on the road, and then went into investigations. Had all different types of training during that 20 years, from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician, which helped my investigative career immensely. And also, it has played a great part in the development of this channel and where we want to go, and to show people how law enforcement looks at things and how they process certain things. And also, there's standards out there how crime scenes are processed. Some agencies follow, some agencies don't. And we, as in the Murdoch case, we saw during cross-examination where crime scene technicians said they didn't follow proper protocol. And of course, there'll be a lot to be answered for that one statement. But anyway, during my career as an investigator and as a crime scene tech, I handled all different types of cases, from thefts, burglaries, up to homicides. And then when I retired, decided to come into law enforcement, or after I retired and left law enforcement, decided to come into the true crime world and allow people to see how law enforcement thinks. And we've moved out as this channel has grown, and opportunity has come up for us to work co-cases, which we never imagined that's where this channel would be going to, and that's where we're heading. And we want to thank all our supporters, our viewers, subscribers, members. You're allowing us to go out and do something that is very dear to our hearts, and we thank y'all. All right, let's get into it tonight.
Wait. Aaron Bremer, 4 months member.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Y'all are making Mrs. Steve so happy. She's playing with the blue lights.
Look in here, my blue light.
Justice Taylor, super sticker. Thank you. Appreciate your support. All right. Of course, if you're not familiar with the Murdoch homicides, that's where Maggie Murdoch and 22-year-old Paul Murdoch were victims of a homicide. Law enforcement has arrested and charged and currently prosecuting Alec Murdoch, the husband and father, for those homicides. And the trial's been going on now, going on 2 weeks, and a lot of information has been brought out there. And the reason I want to address the crime scene tonight is that there's been some photos out there. We have a better understanding of some of the situations, and we have some crime scene sketches, although not the scale that that has been introduced and we're having to go at. But the reason I want people to realize about crime scenes are just like reading a book. Everything means something. That when you go there as a crime scene investigator, or just as an investigator, it doesn't matter, or any individual, when you look at something and you look at that crime scene, everything in that crime scene tells you a part. If you have a a window that's busted, if you have a door that's been pried, if you have footprints going in a certain direction, and you evaluate all that, and it tells you a story. And when that story makes sense in its simplest form is generally where it is. There's not a lot of things that get complex about crime scenes until you get into certain types of individuals that begin staging and trying to set the investigation off in a different direction. And in law enforcement, you're trained to start understanding and preparing to look and find and see those things of and make sure that some of the staging doesn't misdirect your investigation and puts you off in another direction, which is one of the things that is part of this case. We have everything from multiple firearms being used by either one offender or by two offenders. And is that part of the staging? If you listen to the prosecution as the way they're approaching it, yes, that is something that he would have done to try to misdirect the investigation, as he is an attorney, and how he may have staged this situation in using his being known in the community and his status, that he could allow this to occur, which local law enforcement, when they arrived and saw and understood, they immediately called in the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is SLED, and they've handled the investigation. And some aspects of the investigation, there are some excellent experts in this case, and I've seen some that's not so much, and in the early days, but they appear to be getting their footing, and certain things are moving along. And but anyway, one of the things that we have to look at in this case is that on the evening of the homicides, the person who, Alec Murdoch, who has been charged with this case, within hours, just within an hour or so prior to the homicides, he's wearing certain clothing. Right after calling 911 and the officers responding, and they get there and they find this individual wearing, at that time they didn't know he had changed clothing, but they find him wearing a white shirt and a pair of shorts. And through the investigation, we find out that this Paul, the son, made a couple of Snapchat videos that day, which is absolutely amazing. And how they will play a part in this case is vital to the prosecution, because we bring up the question about the clothing. And one of the reasons it's interested myself, and I was speaking to Chris at Mob Crew, and we got discussing and certain aspects of this crime and trying to figure out the crime scene. And
Chris is here.
Chris here? Hey, Chris.
And he sent his folks over.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate you sending everybody over. And as Chris and I collaborate on going throughout as we progress through this year, we have a lot of other things we're going to be looking at. But on this case, we were looking at, and so for the last 3 or 4 days, we went.
At least.
Yeah, we went shopping, got all the materials during the rain, and then the last 2 days when it's been dry, I've been building and recreating this crime scene from what little knowledge that we have. But even from that little knowledge of a few pictures and some testimony, you can learn a lot. And and so that's what we're going to be looking at. And even part of the crime scene is what the individual is wearing that night. But one of the things that the crime scene investigator from SLED, I believe her name was Worley, she had this not to scale diagram that she brought into court and presented. And of course, it gave us some basic measurements. And from those basic measurements, we see that we have the storage room, feed room, where a encounter first occurred with Paul and whoever committed the homicide, which of course has been charged as his father. And that there was some gunfire that had occurred within that storage room. And there's a couple of distinct characteristics that you can tell from the information of the photographs and the markings of the crime scene markers, and looking at where there were certain defects in a bird cage. There's a hole in the window, and we have testimony that the gun was fired at the shotgun was fired at 41 degrees. And with just that basic information, you give me a photo such as this, and we have the hole in the glass, we got the defect in the bird cage, and we have blood spatter back there where the #1 marker is. And then we have a blood trail that comes out into the doorway. And certain things happened in this room and at certain angles. Everything tells a story. The trajectory tells you something. Where the blood trail starts tells you something. Where the blood trail ends tells you. And each part of this, the defects in the bird cage is part of the trajectory. And of course, Worley says, I think she said 41 degrees. And but with that information and looking at this room, which is extremely narrow, there's very limited areas for someone to stand. And when you look back at the area of where #1 marker is, it's just over halfway back in the diagram. So in a 10.5 foot room, you're just over somewhere around 5.5, 6 feet in there. And so knowing that knowledge and then being able to look at this, you can see it. Okay, I understand where he was when the first encounter occurred, and that we have that first shot fired. And so as a crime scene technician, you have to go in there, understand this, and because you're going to get asked if there's something in court and someone can't understand why something occurred, or the trajectory or the blood pattern doesn't make sense, then there's problems. And you have to make everything absolutely clear of how certain things occurred. So anyone now can simply tell you that, oh, okay, this is where the blood trail starts. Something happened at that point. And it did. And there was a gunshot to the chest of Paul at somewhere around 41 degrees that went through the bird cage and out the window and started the trauma, and the injury started bleeding. And of course, that's where the blood trail starts. And so also from that gunshot to the chest, there's something called stippling. And stippling is another part of the story, that you can't have stippling from a firearm unless it's within a certain range. And Chris and I was discussing this, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna go create some tests, and I've been busy all week, and I've been sending it to Chris, and he was gracious enough, said that he would help me, because this is a big deal of a lot of time. I've been working on it for 3 days solid now, building things and shooting things and sending things to Chris, and he's been combining things. And so we're going to have a show where all of this comes together, and we'll be able to tell you and show you the video as we do these things. But the stippling tells you that the gun had to be in a certain position to cause, a gun can shoot hundreds of yards and cause you to start bleeding from some type of trauma, a gunshot wound. And but when you have stippling, it's no longer at hundreds of yards. So you're there at the crime scene and you see that you have stippling on a victim, then we know that that gun is within a certain area. We can look, see the trajectory of the how tall is the individual, where is the defects in the bird cage, where is the hole in the glass, and we can start seeing what that angle is. And it tells us exactly where that individual is and where the offender is and what area. So this offender is standing there somewhere close to that doorway or just inside that doorway. If Paul is 6 feet into the room, the shotgun has to be within 3 feet, and the barrel of the shotgun is probably somewhere between 28 and 32 inches. And so we know that the individual would need to be in there, and the gun would have to be low and angled up to get 41 degrees. And reason we know that, I'll show you here in a second. This is the trajectory of the wound number A that came in.
If Dave is here tonight,
Okay.
pay close attention.
Oh yeah,
This is special.
oh yeah, Dave says I'm gonna blow things up. He's correct, but you're not gonna see that tonight because I'm still working on it, sending it to Chris, and he's working on it too. And thank goodness, because I'm exhausted. Appreciate it. But the first shot trajectory comes into the chest, goes out the back, and goes into the window. And so that's the trajectory number A. Then you have the second trajectory that happened outside, and that was the one, the fatal, which absolutely did all the traumatic injury, head injury, and caused the injuries to the cranial vault, allowing the brain to be expelled from the body and land at Paul's feet, which is absolutely horrendous. And it's terrible, but that is something that the crime scene people would look at and be able to analyze and tell the story of how that could occur. But I just put both of them here so that you could see. And this is actually, this is what I've been building. This is a replica of the feed room. This is the back wall where the blue tape on the back is that the window frame that had the defect, or where the glass was the hole in it. And along that red line is where the bird cage would have been on track A. And so I just built this replica, draped it in white plastic, so that as I do these tests and do the gunfire test and start shooting and things, that everyone would be able to view it and understand it. Because you can see the angle from this one example of how extreme those angles are. I knew the approximate height, like I said, of Paul, and knew about the placement he was in the room. And so it's just a matter of setting it all up. And when you set it up with and then I put a pull string, which is white, which you couldn't see. So I had to put blue tape on my white string so you could see where the angle to that second window pane is that had the hole in it. And so I just did this as something so that you would be able to get a visual of it. And not saying that this is the exact path, because I don't have the coroner's report, hadn't seen the exact injuries, haven't seen the exact track. Just going by what I had seen in the photograph of where the hole in the window is, doing some estimates of, we know that the height of the ceiling is 7'7", or according to the crime scene tech, and using those measurements and everything, and doing a little bit of guesstimations, and having observed hundreds of crime scenes, it all tells a story. And so that story, and so when I went and pulled that string, and then I set Paul in there, or a replica of this mannequin, and I put this individual in there in the approximate area of where the number one blood pattern stain on the floor is. It comes relatively close to the mid section of the chest, just a couple of inches below the collarbone. This mannequin is not real good as far as of showing that, because it's all white, and I pulled the shirt up a lot higher than normal, so you don't see the throat. I was hiding some of the as I assembled the mannequin, but that gives you the angle of what that was. This is WL22. This is fantastic. Greatly appreciated. Thanks, Steve team. Yes, and that's exactly what we are. Chris and I look forward to this, and we will be a team, and even everyone that my viewers and subscribers and people that donate, you're all part of this team, and thank y'all. But so we have this angle, and then if you come from overhead, I got my drone out and I was flying it around today.
He's played
yeah,
for 3 days.
And then you can see from the edge of the doorway to what the window would look like. Like I said, it's a very narrow room. And so I built that window frame in the back part of the table. This is a 6-foot table. And so you can see that I put him pretty close, about a foot back, and to get him around that midsection of the room. And you can see this angle. And the reason I did all these angles is that as I go in and I recreate this scene, I have to be able to place a firearm in a similar position to get that angle. And it has to strike and has to travel that path so that you could be able to tell people in court. And so there won't ever be a question of, well, this doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, there's something wrong with the story, and you have to go in there and figure it out and do your testing, do these controls, see exactly what it is. And I made 2 shots today. I blowed up 2 things today. And, you know, when you only get one chance at this, of course, I could reset the room back up time and time again, but I'm not into that. I'm into being extremely precise and trying to do things. And you'll see from the videos what occurred as I went in and completed these tests, and see if that story makes sense. Because, like I said, anytime someone says, well, that doesn't make any sense, Missy Scott, $10 super sticker. Thank you. Appreciate your support. That this all makes sense. And let's see here. Just to give you a reminder, as you can see the pane over there, it's the middle pane, or second pane from the top over on the left-hand side that has that hole and that defect. And so when you line everything up, the 41 degree down, and from the center of the room, you see that slight angle, that is extended even more a little bit to the left. If you look to the top where that frame would be, that is just to the left where my blue marker wound up. I had to run it a little bit to the side so that I could put the mannequin in the proper position and still have a true straight line and not interfere with it. All right. So now, let me get a drink of coffee here. I've been out, my throat's a little itchy today.
Playing in the outdoors.
Playing in the outdoors. So once I had this shot done, then we have to move to another shot. And of course, I did the stippling test so that you would be able to see at different distances. I did stippling with a 300 blackout at 3 feet and a 12 gauge 3-inch, a number 4 shot at 3 feet. And I was absolutely stunned by what happened with the 12 gauge. I never planned it to happen, but it happened, and it's on video, and you will be impressed when you see that shot.
Yes, you will.
And okay. So after you get this lined up, then the next thing that we have to do is ballistic gelatin. For individuals out there that's never played or never had anything to do with any type of testing with firearms, ballistic gelatin is a process. I cooked in
My kitchen.
Mrs. Steve's kitchen, and I was cooking during the rain and preparing 2 of the cranial vault and from ballistic gelatin to simulate a head. And so for you to have this so that when I go out and we demonstrate, and Chris and we were talking about what would be the best way and how could it be as accurate as possible to see what is seen in the crime scene photos of what the debris, the pieces of body, tissue that is scattered across the crime scene. Ballistic gelatin replicates that extremely well, as you'll see. And probably this is probably going to be at least 2 or 3 parts because it's taking a long, it's lengthy. It's taking a long time set this up, and so hopefully Chris will be able to help me some more, and we'll get this up and going in the next few days. But with a ballistic gelatin, I made it out of a mold, and we'll have that process up for y'all also if you're interested in it. But when you have ballistic gelatin and you have a crime scene, then we have to create a mannequin. And not only do you have a mannequin, you have a ballistic gelatin infused with synthetic blood. And through Searchy, which is a company that supplies law enforcement with a lot of different supplies across the board to assist in all different types of processing and crime scenes. They have developed, or some company has developed, synthetic blood, which is extremely accurate, and it works really well as far as the luminol test. So I built this. I made 2 shots today, and the first shot, of course, was just to replicate the shot inside. Then I brought this mannequin outside the doorway and made another shot. And like I said, once again, as we finish up and get everything sent and compiled, and it's a very interesting video. And when I shot this one, it is self-explanatory of that Dave is absolutely correct when things get blown up around me. And so we did that. And so after tomorrow, and when it gets dark, and I'm after my members only meeting with on YouTube, I'm going to go out, and I've got to luminol because the crime scene is still up there, and all the body fluids, the synthetic blood, the ballistic gelatin is there, and I'm going to process that tomorrow and next day and have that sent to Chris, and we're going to have some more shows on that. But it's a multi-part series, but it's so important that we understand that as this trial goes forward, that other people and the experts, and I don't know what experts are going to be able to get in and on the Murdoch trial, but all those gunshots and how it was described, and why would Paul change clothes? After the ballistic gelatin infused synthetic blood, you will know why he changed clothes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that if he is the offender, which he is considered innocent until proven guilty, but you will see why he would need to do that. And it was absolutely very revealing. And I learned some things about where the gun had to be positioned. And Chris and I will be discussing that. And it's just a theory. There's no guarantee. I'm only going on what I've seen and what I've seen on other crimes, and how can certain dynamics come together to create certain blood patterns. And I don't have firsthand knowledge of other than just some pictures and some measurements and some mentions of where certain body tissues and fluids and blood were located. And so that's what I was wanting to discuss tonight. And so if anyone has any questions.
Jennifer Rochelle's worried about your neighbors. What your neighbors think.
My neighbors are they enjoy my company. They think, I guess they think it. Yeah, they enjoy it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, but yeah, but it's something that we have to understand, that there's no mystery about the crime scene stuff, and that when we're looking at it, it's just like reading a book. And once you understand the fundamentals of that, the stippling tells you something, the blood trails tell you something, the blood pattern tells you something, the cast off tells you something, the muzzle energy when it has interactions with parts of the body tells you that when that kinetic energy hits the body and it's transferred to the body, certain things occur. And it's all a part of a learning process. And law enforcement are trained, certain individual law enforcement are trained to go out there and understand what that means. And I was lucky enough to be one of those individuals. And I absolutely was among some men and women that it would be absolutely amazing to you to see how they could walk into a room and within seconds, they could almost tell you without pulling strings exactly what happened. And it's an amazing thing to see. And it's how quick that once it's like everything that you do. If you're in a profession and you do it long enough, you'll be able to walk into something, see it, understand it, and be able to tell other people, this is what we need to do. And we need to verify if this is true and this doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you have to find out why. All right.
All right, you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So let's write this. Okay. All right, and Anne. Oh, Mrs. Steve, how's that hand healing up? Are you doing physical therapy? No physical therapy. I'm still in a cast. Cast comes off Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm ready. Thank you so much for asking. All right. Now, history underfoot. Did he think L.E. would accept his version because he's a Murdoch?
That may have been the case, but then when Slid came in, of course, he lost all ability of that. And it's still, there's a lot of mystery to it, which, it makes no sense to me why they use two different firearms. I don't have understand of why that occurred. I don't know if it's something that was pre-planned or something occurred during the crime itself. Did we have a firearm that malfunctioned and it was necessary to get a secondary firearm? There's a lot of things that we don't understand about that we don't have information about currently. Or was it something that he staged? Guns are, not always fire. They jam, they tear up. You can put the wrong ammo, and I believe there was something about one of the guns did have wrong ammo in it. And was that the case that it didn't fire, and so we had to go get another gun? That's a possibility. Is that something that they will talk about? I don't know. It would be something I would bring up.
All right. And Anne, Mr. Steve, does that storage run blood pattern indicate Paul was shot while he was in the room and then staggered out where his body was found?
Yes.
But how, since the shot to the head was so devastating?
First shot was to the chest, and I believe something after that first shot at almost point blank range, because it had to be within 3 feet, and gun at a certain angle, that it was to the chest, and Paul did something that probably shocked the shooter. He didn't go down. And which when you shoot someone with a shotgun, and it is extremely devastating. And what happened? Did a struggle start? Did Paul still have enough ability? Because it's not like in the movies. When you get shot, some people have extreme pain tolerance, and they can get through that first shock, and they can still fight and struggle. Is that what happened here? Was Paul able to still grab that firearm and start wrestling? And I believe so. And I think that from that first incident and that massive trauma and the blood flow that happened back there, and then they went out the door to the front, and that's where the fatal shot was. Because you can see the blood spatter at the number 1 marker. There's nothing past that you can see. Now, there is a lot of blood spatter back there, but it's going to be small, high velocity, because when you have back spatter and you have forward spatter. But the back spatter is going to be high velocity. It's going to be smaller. And of course, from those two entrances, you have immediate blood flow. And so it's coming out and it creates this first blood pattern. And there's some 90-degree drops there that if you go out and search, you'll see them. And those 90 degrees drops tell you that he was stationary long enough for some of the blood to fall straight down and at 90 degrees. It's not cast off, it's 90 degrees. And I'll have that in one of my future parts of this. I'll show you what the 90 degrees look like. And then, of course, as you can see, the blood trail heading to the door. And once we get to the door, something else happens. Second shot.
Okay. And Kimmy, so he was shot first in the room and then shot again after he went out of that room.
Yes. Yes. There's no, once he suffered that head injury and that gunshot wound to his head, and there's no surviving that.
No. All right. And Sean, it's been a while. His brother passed away. So our condolences
Yes.
to you and glad you're back with us.
Absolutely.
All right. And Ann, Mr. Steve, both shots, A and B, seem to be from very low levels, angled sharply upwards. Alex M. is very tall. How could he be leveling a shotgun from that low angle upwards?
Brilliant. And that was the question. And that's the whole reason of this series. It doesn't make sense unless certain things occurred. And that's what you're going to see. I was able to go out and replicate, and you'll see where those angles were and where that gun was, and why that's just my personal opinion. Just based upon my training, my knowledge of gunshot and trajectories of what I believe happened. I'm not saying it is, but it's just what I believe. And you'll see that. I've got to get with Chris. I don't know what day we'll do that on, but you're exactly right. I was able to replicate both shots and those angles.
All right. And Robin, since you are always purchasing things to conduct these tests for us, have you considered doing an Amazon wish list? I think somebody mentioned that earlier, didn't they? Mm-hmm. That would allow us to help you purchase the things you need. We'll have to look into that.
Yes. Not only that, but we're also, as far as for our cold case, also that people wishing to support us. And as Chris and I collaborate and we move across the country doing things, our trust fund,
foundation.
The Trust Fund Foundation, True Crime Web Foundation, nonprofit. We go to the final stages next week, and after that, that will be up. And then, of course, the wish list and stuff, it will be part of that. But yeah, we're forming that, and because there's a lot of things that we need to do out there for the victims of cold cases.
Okay, and I gotta know. Oh, I love that. Cool. Is Paul taller than Alex?
Don't believe so. But still, as you'll see, the angle. Let's see. Let me go back here. Let me figure out where I'm at. Went the wrong way. Of course, I had two ways to go in, and the angle. This first gunshot, I believe, I was able to accomplish this from firing it from the hip, and I put it exactly. Let's see here. Where is it? I'll put it exactly through that pane of window, shooting from the hip. Shot through Paul at this location, a little bit to the left of where this arrow is, but I was able to put it exactly through that pane, and you'll be able to see that. I have that where Chris had I don't know if Chris has. No, Chris doesn't have this. I'm about to send that to him tonight because I blew up the stuff today. But but I was able to accomplish this simply from shooting from the hip.
Okay.
And some of these angles, and like I said, they were talking about 41 degrees. There's a little bit of manipulation you can have in there. I mean, you could have a variable. It depends where you're at in that room. A couple inches this way, or a foot this way, or a foot that way. The gun a little bit lower can all change. And so it's somewhere around there. And this is just me off of my visual of the hole in the glass and where he is. And I believe Chris sent me the information. I think he said Paul was somewhere around 5'7", and this mannequin top of his head here is at 5'7". I went to that extreme of trying to get, and I think that's about the average person, 5'8" or something, I think.
All right. And affidavit. Oh, that's cute. Did Paul know his father was shooting him? Shot A seems to be front to back.
Yes, whoever shot him, if it is Paul, who's being prosecuted, Alex, who's being prosecuted for it, yes, he would have been looking straight at him.
Okay. And if you're ever traveling around in your truck with all these materials, hope you don't get stopped by LE. You'll have a lot of splaining to do.
If they ever luminol my vehicle, yes, I will. And that's something else. Gunshot residue would never work on me. If they did any testing for gunshot residue or blood spatter.
Never.
Never.
And Jeff F. Steve, with your testing, it appears it would be a hip shot.
Yes. And like I said, I was able to accomplish this exact trajectory from the hip.
All righty.
And even, like I said, hit that, let me see, hit that at the end of the A shot. I put it right in that pane of window. Exactly.
Okay. And Sean, with knowledge of ballistics and type of weapon used, can they determine how far away the shot was taken and how to arrive at that conclusion?
Yes, with stippling, you can. On the right-hand side with a 12 gauge or with any type of firearm, they mentioned stippling in a couple of these instances. And for that to occur, the muzzle has to be within a certain distance. And stippling starts falling off somewhere around 4 feet. But anything from 1 foot or point blank all the way out to somewhere around 3 or 4 feet, where it depends on the firearm, it depends on how it starts falling away. And so they can tell that if there's stippling involved, and stippling is simply the unspent powder and chemicals and compounds and even some parts of lead, small minute particles that tattoo the skin and clothing, and you'll see it when you see the testing. I have some great photographs, and you'll be able to see exactly the stippling and that smut ring that occurs anytime a firearm's at close range to an individual.
Josh the Posh. You gonna read it?
Okay. If firing from the hip does doing so tell law enforcement anything as far as planned or unplanned, organized or disorganized? Well, if you only had one victim, you may be able to tell a different story. And it may be that, it was something accidental. That's not the case here. We have 2 victims. But not only that, you have one victim, that Paul, that if he had went down with that first shot and not fought or come out or engage or was able to get out of the room, that may have been something that could have explained that, it was some type of accident. And but then it turns into something else. Is that a possibility? Alpha David, 499 super sticker. Thank you. Appreciate your support.
And I love your name.
And so by him coming out and he gets shot a second time, then the accident's over. And was that going to be possibly something that might have occurred and might have been stated that, oh, okay, but now that we've gone on to a second level, something else. Mom crew,
Green light special. It ain't green. He's talking about money.
Oh, okay. Okay. But yes. And so there's a lot of different things that law enforcement would think about that, is it something that escalated further than what anyone imagined? Was it supposed to just possibly be that it would be this one individual, Paul would be the only victim, and then he wasn't the staging of a possible accident didn't occur, and now we have a full-blown homicide, and now we have a witness to a homicide, and did it escalate into that? We don't know, and that's just speculation, but it's something that law enforcement would discuss.
All right. And Miss says, or was he on a four-wheeler?
How he got back and forth, I don't know. Law enforcement, his phone was turned off for a reason. And that's one of the things that will always be part of this case, that during the times of the homicides, and he says he's somewhere else. And then, but I don't think he was on a four-wheeler. We have Alex and Paul and Maggie all talking on that video, and you can hear them clearly. They're there together, and when families travel together, generally they all travel in the same vehicle.
Okay.
Greta Gross, how can a state senator defend in a state versus Murdoch case? I know that he's a state senator and everything, but the relationships of it, but I think it's quite common. There's a lot of attorneys in our state senates, for good or not, there are a lot of them in there.
All right. And sees through, when can we luminol Mrs. Steve's car? For science, of course.
Oh, yes. Yes, as I was putting up and building the feed room, I noticed that I had already hurt myself, and I have some actual Steve DNA that will show up in the luminol also.
Always. Always. All right. And Mist, do you think this was a rush to judgment against AM as
defendant
claimed in opening statements, as we see testimony?
I think it's right the opposite. I mean, rush to judgment is that they get there and find a shotgun, and within days, this went on for even the defense says that they was accusatory during their interviews, and all this is on tape. But no, I don't. I do not believe it's a rush to judgment, and we will find out by the end of the trial exactly how good of case they have. The prosecution did not start off well, but in the last couple of days they have made great headway. Cold Truth, clean up. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. P.S. Mrs. Steve, I love your voice and kindness. Thank you. She is a sweetheart.
Oh, ain't that so sweet?
Yeah.
All right. So hold on. Let's see here. Come on. And history underfoot. Maybe he used two weapons to make it look like two people shooters.
Absolutely. Very possible. And we don't know what's going on in his mind. And but yes, absolutely. I can't argue against that.
Yep. And here's I gotta know with the same thing. Were the two people shot with different guns?
Yes. Paul was shot with a shotgun, and Maggie was shot with a 300 blackout. which is a rifle built on a platform similar to a M4 AR-15 type of weapon. It's just a semi-automatic that people use.
Okay. And Missy at True Crime Web. How long does GSR last on the skin? Do all traces of it come right off by washing? On clothes? Thank you. Glad to see Mrs. Steve on the mend. Thank you.
The sooner you get to it, the better. If you can get to, I mean, you know, skin, wear, rubbing your hands, all this stuff, you can shed a lot of stuff. But I think, you know, time-wise, the quicker you can get to it, if you can get to it in that first hour, 2 or 3 hours, if next day, days after, it means nothing. And handling firearms that have been fired recently, GSR has some issues with it. They did, you know, there's a lot of stuff that can, and a lot of variables in GSR that is not as conclusive as one would think.
Okay. And Mr. Steve, were the casings in Paul's vicinity all from one gun or two? If 2 guns, does that mean the shooter was carrying 2 guns?
There was different, I think the first shot in the room, I believe, was double-aught buckshot. And the second shot was I think it was number 4 or something, or some type of a birdshot. And same caliber, 12-gauge shotgun versus what Maggie was shot with, which was a 300 blackout. And the thing about feed rooms and hunting areas and gunshot or shot shells, ammo, spent rounds, they gather. How many times have, you know, I don't know if you could walk anywhere around my house and not find a gun, a spent round fired in some direction at some point. I've been here, what, 20 something?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've been on this property my whole life. So, but just with this house, over 20 years, and shot shells and spent brass casings, they're everywhere. And so they could be more than
even in the washer.
You know, even in the washer. But you could have in these hunting areas, these hunting pens, and you have to remember a lot of hunting dogs, part of the training procedure for young dogs at dog kennels is that when they're young and they're pups, that when you feed them, you'll fire a gun while they're eating and they'll get used to gunfire. And now, is that part of the way, the regimen of how they trained their dogs? I have no idea. So you could have a lot of shotgun shells laying around and different calibers, because that's part of the training for certain working dogs and bird dogs especially.
History underfoot. Were both of Paul's wounds from same weapon? Sorry, I missed that detail.
They're both, from my understanding, a 12-gauge. And the problem with shotguns are that they're not so easy to identify. They don't have the characteristics such as rifling that a rifle has. So, but yes, they were both from we're talking about one room and 2 gunshots that's within 6 feet of each other that happened in a very short time period, because you have that blood trail that is continuously, and it goes out to the doorway and where there's another shot. And what was the time period on that? Because he was shot, and so he wouldn't be there in that doorway very long, upright, with I don't know how serious of a chest wound it was, but we will find that out, and that'll give us a little bit more information.
I'm not sure about that one. I usually lurk here, but have a question.
Excellent.
Can you better explain Friday's bombshell that the casings near the bodies matched casings at the shooting range?
What that indicates is that a firearm that was part of this homicide had been used on the property in the past by someone on the property. Who is that person? Of course, the common denominator in this case, as they're trying to prove, is going to be that any one of the members of the family members could have shot that firearm, that 300 blackout, somewheres on the property on that firing range at any time. Doesn't mean that it was only the offender that had shot that gun. Paul, or his brother, or Alex, or Maggie, or one of their friends could have been at the firing range firing this exact weapon. And then this weapon, when they find the shell casing, they go to the that were fired during the homicides. They're also able to go back and check the firing range, and they're able to link that this one common gun was fired not only at the firing range, but at the kennels.
Alrighty. And I hope I'm not missing anybody. I'm trying my best here. And Josh, did Alex ambush them from behind? Did not want them to see his face?
No, Paul was shot. If you go by what is known so far, or hinted at, or from what has been released, and if it's true, Paul was shot from the chest and it exited out the back. Unless we find out some from different information, that's the information that is currently out there. I hadn't heard it in court yet, but I don't have all the testimony either.
Okay. And missed, wasn't Mom also shot down into a headshot?
Yes, there was stippling on one of her wounds also.
Okay. And Debbie, Mr. Steve, was Paul shot through the window or the door?
He, from my understanding and everything I've seen of this, he was shot by an individual. If Paul was standing in the room facing out towards the door, the offender would have been standing between the doorway and Paul, facing Paul, and shot Paul face to face.
And Ann, do you think Paul was shot first?
I believe so.
That was quick. SSS, could the person have been on their knees taking a tactical position?
And that's part of the of what we're looking at. That could be the case, and from certain things you fall. I've been there. That you can misstep, and if you look on videos and training videos, movement, that if you take a step or something and you're not paying attention, you're easily tripped up. And can the offender, could Paul have pushed him, shoved him, and he fell and lost his balance and landed on the floor? Absolutely. Could this gunshot been fired from someone kneeling from the hip on this first one? Could be that we were sitting and shot. It could have been that also. Could we have fallen and fired? Absolutely. Any of those scenarios will play out. It could have possibly be.
All right. And history underfoot, does shooting him from the hip mean anything, like skills or concealing a weapon? Is it unusual to shoot like that?
Shotguns, yes. 12 gauge, and especially 3-inch, they're extremely abusive to the human body on the recoil. But I know you see it a lot in movies and things. and it's not typically the way that you will want to fire a firearm, but it can be done that way. And you know, my father was a great bird hunter, and when the birds rose on a covey of quail on the rise, I've seen him knock them out of the air from the hip on the way to his shoulder to fire. Some people have certain skill sets, and especially bird hunters. So shooting from the hip is not something that is uncommon for people to do, but it is uncomfortable, and certain type of firearms won't function if you shoot from the hip. Some of the semi-automatics that work off of that there has to be a certain amount of resistance for the recoil and the functioning of the gun. Some guns will just work off of gas, but some guns do require certain amount of resistance.
And Joan, didn't shot one enter the side? Would that mean he was turning around? Thank you both for all your hard work offline.
My understanding from the first shot was from the chest through the back. The second shot was from the side of the shoulder at an extreme angle, passing through the left shoulder near the throat area and into the base of the skull, and then causing that gunshot wound and traumatic injury to the head.
And Mr. Steve, what does a hip shot with a long barrel weapon even work? Have only seen hip shots in old westerns at high noon.
Oh yeah, with pistols and things. But yes, you can shoot a shotgun, and you'll see it. Actually, you'll see that whenever Chris and I finish, or whenever Chris finished some of the production work on him, that he's working on currently.
Okay, bear with me 1 second here.
I don't like shooting shotguns from the hip. It can be done. I just don't like it.
And I hope I'm not missing anybody. And if I do, I apologize. Chat is extremely active tonight.
Good. Hope they're having a good time. Hope y'all enjoying it. Good.
And Karen, do we know where Paul's brain was located? They say brain. Oh, they say brain at his feet. So outside on the ground at Paul's feet where he was lying on the ground. Thanks.
Part of the test I did was trying to replicate that.
I got you.
And I almost was able to replicate that.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty gross.
Yeah, it was gross too. I keep going the wrong way tonight. I don't know.
It's really not.
Yeah. But yes, when the cranial vault, from all the pressure from the kinetic energy, is placed in the cranial vault, which is the skull, when it explodes from all that kinetic energy from a shotgun blast, it is extremely devastating.
You're going to be grateful it's synthetic. All
Yes,
right.
yes, I was glad it was synthetic blood today.
All right, and Davey, a bunch of numbers. Why would he shoot from the hip and potentially miss?
I have no idea why this shot was shot from this low angle. All we know is that unless someone explains to us, and if Alex at some point explains why, I have no idea. But he did almost miss for the fact that it didn't put Paul down. Hit him off center a little bit further to the left, and I'm sure than what he anticipated, and which led to a follow-up shot. Kristen Cure, new viewer. What are dimensions of feed room? The feed room.
Thank you for your donation.
Yes, appreciate it. It says by this not to scale diagram that the crime scene tech put in there that it's a 5 by 5 foot 6 or 8. I can't really see that, how wide it is. And that's from the doorway entry that across the room there. It's just over 5 and somewhere around 5.5 feet. Lengthwise, from the doorway to the window is 10.5 feet. And the height of the storage room ceiling is 7 feet and 7 inches, I believe, is what it says. And so those are the dimensions of the room. And that's what I replicated in building this, so that I could have those dimensions and put that window pretty close to where it's supposed to be.
And Norway?
Yes. Thank you for putting on such a great show. Wishing you all the best. Thank you. Appreciate your support. It means a lot to us. That's awesome. GHI Rebels Reddit, 99.99. Thank you for representing the true crime community in a positive and professional manner, Rebels. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely. We appreciate that.
Yes.
So much.
Yes.
Okay, let's see here.
We will put that to good use. There's a lot of things that we need to do this year, and we will absolutely put that to good use. Thank you for your support.
All right. And the Rockaways. I have watched the entire trial. How come I did not comprehend any of what is being presented here? Is the prosecution just disorganized? I'm sure there's better understanding. You say we're not seeing the screens, and I understand what they're talking about, but we're not seeing the screens that the jury is seeing. They have it's laid out better for them, I would imagine, or I hope so. Or if not, then of course they're confused and lost as last year's Easter egg, and that's not a good thing. But and like I said, from what I've seen, and I've seen all the crime scenes that you would ever want to see, and during our training we see thousands and thousands of crime scenes and analysis of those. So it makes sense to me, but the angles and everything, when they said that 41 degrees and the defect and that the bird cage is on a table and you see the hole in the window, unless you know, and that's how come I'm doing this, so that people can better understand what it does mean. Okay, hold on, I just had one. But I'm hoping that the prosecution's screens are giving the jury a better understanding of what this means. Okay. And Ella, James, do AR shoot multiple shots simultaneously as a rule? Well, I mean, their magazines have capacity. I mean, you can get AR magazines from all different 5 rounds, 10 rounds, 20, 30 round magazines. So you have the capabilities of shooting the that AR platform, you know, and you can shoot it 1 round every 1 second, or 1 round every 5 seconds, or if you're really have active and well trained, you can shoot multiple rounds per second, and it just depends on the individuals firing the weapon. And Libby, can a bullet be identified coming from same gun? Yes. Rifling and there's a lot of different characteristics as far as the chamber, firing pin, all the way down to the rifling that can identify a bullet. Okay, gonna go find another one. And Christian, would Alec have been shocked when Paul's brain scattered all over the place? I think he probably was. If he is the offender, then he was probably shocked when he shot him the first time and he didn't go down, and then that started a chain of events that led to the second shot, and then absolutely
at some time, at some point, revelation. Because my first thought today when I was doing the test firing and shot the mannequin on that second shot with the ballistic gelatin, I was equally surprised. It's not something that you imagine until you see it.
I gotta know, do you think jury is understanding all this?
I don't know. I don't know what's on those screens, um, and um, and and you know, they could be lost. I don't know. Does all the jurors, and that's the thing among juries, is that you'll have some people that have absolutely a great grasp of the situation, and then you'll have others that don't quite understand. But when the deliberations start and everybody starts discussing, there'll be people in there that will, as they deliberate and explain, and what does this mean, that hopefully they'll be able to bring justice and understand everything that has been said.
Okay. And let's see, that was for B. And Ella, or L, was there a manhunt for the shooters if it was not AM? Why the next day Ellie announced the public had no need for alarm and was not in danger?
That's the most aggravating thing that ever. I mean, you hear it all the time, that we have a homicide and law enforcement goes, says that public's not at danger. Well, I don't concur. You know, until you put somebody in handcuffs, um, we're in danger. That's just my personal opinion. I have no idea why law enforcement sometimes makes those statements.
And Mr. Steve, were either of the two actual shells, or bullets to me, found? If so, and their different types, did shooter reload in the course of the crime?
Yes, whenever the rounds go through and they enter, and not all rounds will completely pass through, or they lose a lot of their energy, and they, especially with shotguns, some of them they'll pass through. They may hit bone, cartilage, then they get caught up in clothing, and they may just fall there, or they may lose a lot of their energy and go over and hit the wall and bounce down, and now you have some shot out of a shotgun shell that has the DNA and is, you know, it's part of that crime scene. And so then when you go to the other one, you have the exact same thing, that some of the shot will be there. There may be some left in the body, and so they're able to identify different types of rounds.
And Kristen,
Do you think Alex had to chase after Maggie? Was she standing there? From the many directions and angles, no, she was not standing there. It appears that even from the one that ground impact that occurred, was that due to that she was running, or what caused that ground impact, and what angle was it fired from, and from what direction? Law enforcement knows, you know, but there's when you look at the reported injuries and the angles fired, it appears that there was quite a bit of movement on her part. But whenever she went down, of course, they said that there was one that was almost that had stippling, and it's to the her head, and of course at that point you have to look at execution.
all right. And Ray of Light at True Crime Rep, new subscriber, like your vibe and analysis. What's your theory regarding who shot them and motives so far? If you have two or more theories, please use percentages of likelihood.
Now it appears from everything I've seen. Now I was last week I was I was like everyone else. This isn't going well for the prosecution. But this week, when I have a better understanding of the financials and the everything that's going on, although once again, you can't, just because you're a scam artist and you are a bad person at heart doesn't mean that you are a murderer. But then again, it starts building towards that motive of why, and then being confronted the day of and knowing that, well, it's over because the chief financial officer is coming out with it. She confronted me today. And is that the thing that brought it to a boiling point? And it may very well possibly be. But I think that it's just a storm of different things that occurred. And, it's just my personal opinion. It does appear that, it is going towards that he will be, or that he is the responsible party. But with that being said, he's still innocent until proven guilty. But, personal opinion, it's looking that way, that he is the one responsible.
And Mary L. 12. How far apart were Maggie and Paul?
Let's see here. If you go by this chart here, it says, and like I said, I don't know how good these measurements are, that from the corner of the building where the kennel is across that passageway looks like 19 feet. And then it says another 19. So you're looking at, as a line of sight anywhere between 30 to 50 feet.
Okay.
But this isn't the scale, so it's kind of confusing on that part.
And True Crime with Sunshine. Do you think Maggie was running, in your opinion?
At some point, I do believe that she was mobile because the shots are dispersed over a large part of her body versus centralized, such as someone that is caught off guard or stationary and from different angles. So but that doesn't mean that she's hit with one shot, goes down, and then as they approach, they may still be shooting and person could be moving. Law enforcement would be able to tell you what type of ground impacts, if there are, and they'd be able to tell you from that, are they because certain angles can only be accomplished through the body if a person's in a certain orientation, and law enforcement will look at that and see if they have those.
And I think we've answered this before. Kristen,
Yes.
What was the dimensions on the feed room? We did that one.
Basically 5.5 by 10.5 by 7 by 7 foot 7 inches.
Okay. And Mr. Steve, did you move your mannequin regarding shot B to reflect theory that Paul stumbled forward to outside doorway after shot A?
Yes, I moved. I just, for creating the slideshow tonight, I just used this one. But whenever I made shot A was in this exact position, shot B, I moved him outside the doorway.
Okay. And Steve, the firearms examiner said the firing pin marks weren't conclusive to matching that gun. Do you think he switched out bolt carriers?
Anything's possible, and that's a good point. But these guns are, people buy multiple parts and build their own, and you can get different carrier groups and different parts of these firearms and trade out, and it's nothing to anyone. As many guns are being built now by individuals. That's a good point, though.
And Cynthia Wackadoodle, what if there was a physical altercation? Shooter was pushed over. Would that explain the low shot?
I believe so. That's very possible. Like I said, I was in law enforcement for for 20 years, and I've been flat on my back several times. It's not a good feeling, and it happens. And but yes, that's very possible.
Don't forget to slap that like button for us.
Yes, we appreciate it. It means a lot to us.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. And Liz Matthews, hi, Steve. Would one hear the sounds of each shot of those guns from the house distance?
You would expect so. It, you know, shotguns are extremely loud. Blackout 300s are loud, but blackout 300s can be suppressed, whereas shotguns can be suppressed too. But it's just it takes a lot. But yeah, you would be able to hear them. But are you? I don't. You're talking about a piece of property that has a firing range on it, and what are the gunshots and how often? Would people even report any gunfire there? I mean, I don't know what the average number of shots fired in that part of the country is a day.
Okay, that was Liz. All right, and Debbie, question: in your test, do you do Maggie shooting also?
That will come up next week. I didn't for this first part. Just did the Paul, but yes, I will be doing. I did some 300 testing as far as the stippling for that and preparation, but that shooting will and demonstration will be next coming days.
All right, and Slapfish Creations. Sir, Steve, in my opinion, AM is guilty. What truly drove it home for me was the interview with Investor. He said, quote, "This is so sad. I did him so bad," end quote. Your opinion on that statement, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it is an odd statement that you would do, but are you regretting something in your life or previous to? But he is the one charged with it, and it doesn't look good for him to be making that type of statements and taken in that context. What context did he make it in? I have no idea.
All right. And that is the last one I had starred. So let's go see what else we got.
Appreciate everybody coming in tonight, and I hope that it's been informative. If you like this video, absolutely share it, like it, subscribe, and we appreciate all your support and everything. And we've got a long way to go. Chris and I working. Like I said, I'm exhausted, and I still got 2 or 3 more days of work to do, and then Chris is doing the production part of it, and he's got some long hours in it already. And I look forward to seeing the finished results.
Are you doing more, or?
If you need to.
I'm just cruising.
Okay.
Let's see here. Barb H1, why didn't police go to Alex's mom's house for 4 months?
Well, and that counters the rush to judgment, because if they didn't even search Alex's house for a long time, or go back and take the seatbelt and other things from Alex's vehicle. So the rush to judgment is not a real big thing, and so I understand where you're going with that. I don't know why they didn't, other than they didn't considering possibly a suspect, or they didn't have enough probable cause. Which that doesn't make sense. Probable cause is very easy to come up with.
Okay, let me go find this. Oh, here we go.
Honeybee super sticker, $3. Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much. All right, and let's see here. Mrs. Steve, if you've seen that lets me out. I haven't seen the Snapchat. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Do you want to answer? What do you think?
If you've seen that, what do you think was a concern about Cash the dog's tail? I've watched that video, and I can't tell what's wrong with his tail.
Is it crooked?
No, I don't know. But there was some type of injury it's supposed to have been on it. And
I mean, they can break a tail.
I guess. I don't know. She knows more about dogs than I do.
Yep. Yep, 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 yep. Love my babies. All right. And let's see here. Karen, was Alex paid the insurance on Maggie and Paul? Does he have to pay it back if found guilty?
You know, and I
Yes.
think they discussed that. I don't know if there was even policies on them, and that was something I didn't understand. And when Alex hired the hitman to commit the homicide on him, there was supposed to be a 10 million payout to his son and surviving son.
Buster.
And I just that was strange that he would be the only one that was insured.
Yeah. Okay. And all right. So if I've missed anybody, drop Steve a line or drop it in YouTube after the show's ending, and he will answer them for you.
Yes, absolutely. If you got any questions or need any,
Yes.
or just send me an email, steve@truecrimeweb.com.
This has been amazing.
Yeah, and we appreciate everyone's interest in this case, and then all the victims out there that are victims of crime, and hopefully at some point justice will be found for these two victims, and as the case goes forward, pray for all the families and think of them. And but we want to thank everyone that's been here tonight, and y'all take care, be safe out there, and let's see.
You gonna leave it on that page?
Yeah, let me. Which one do I want to go to?
I don't know. Not that.
Not that. We'll go to
We'll
Luminol.
go that one.
Yeah, we'll go to Luminol.
All right.
But anyway, we want to thank everybody for coming in tonight, and I look forward to seeing tomorrow night. I have my members only to all my members. That's Sunday night, and then that'll be at 7 o'clock. And then PS
Yes.
$49.99. Keep driving the numbers up on this channel. They deserve it.
Thank you so
Very,
much.
very sweet of you, and we appreciate it. Like I said, we'll put that good use.
Y'all are the best.
And then tomorrow night after midnight, I do the morning watch, and I'm looking forward to all of my people that's out there in the morning that are late night coffee drinkers. And look forward to seeing y'all. Stay safe. See ya.
Love y'all.